Welcome to Getting Better with Dr. Adam. Dr. Adam Silberstein is a clinical psychologist who has been working in the field since 1993. With a broad range of clinical experience, including state psychiatric hospitals, adolescent residential treatment with a trauma focus, the Department of Corrections, and in the addiction treatment arena. Adam is currently in private practice and serves as a clinical consultant and supervisor for a number of treatment centers. This podcast is for general information and entertainment purposes only. This should not be considered treatment advice, nor is it a substitute for an individual treatment plan. If you have questions or concerns about your individual situation, it is strongly recommended you consult a licensed professional to talk about things that are specific to you. If there is an emergency, it is strongly recommended you seek treatment at your nearest emergency room.
So I bet you never heard of this, financial therapy. In my way of searching the internet, stumbled upon Dr. Megan McCoy after realizing that I have no idea about matters money in a very meaningful way. My knowledge, at best, at the time that I searched for Dr. Megan McCoy, was superficial at best. Dr. Megan McCoy is a financial therapist, and actually, ready for this, Kansas State University has a financial therapy certification program. And the goal is not to learn how to make money, but as therapists, to be able to come to appreciate the significant importance and meaning of money and how it affects individuals and families, and what people's histories and ideas about what money means, and how that can impact the work we do, both with individuals and with couples. So I hope you enjoy this. It was super illuminating for me to learn about all the different types of money scripts and values that people, not good or bad, values people bring into life based on their own history of money and what it means to them. So hope you enjoy Dr. Megan McCoy. Hi there. I am Adam Silberstein here on Getting Better with Dr. Adam. And it's been a minute since I've actually been in the recording mode. So I'm sort of gathering myself. And what a great way to start this. I'm excited about this discussion I'm about to have with Dr. Megan McCoy. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And as I gather myself, I just am recalling when back in the earlier days of the pandemic, not early days, but sometime as we were maybe just approaching vaccine,
hmm
I had a lot of extra time on my hands, and I do what I do. I'm just like, I had this meeting with a financial planner, and I'm realizing, like, I have no idea what he's talking about. I have
Yeah.
no idea what he's saying, but I'm diligent. I'm diligent in the sense that I try to put away for retirement and do the things I need to do. And the financial planner, the financial planner says to me, like he's talking about what we're going to do, and he's telling me, all these things, and I realized, oh my God, I have no idea what he's saying. And
hmm
it's, I know that there is, I know that percentage growth, I know certain things. And I got into sort of a deep dive of who's talking about money. And if I don't really have a good grasp on it, right, who does in terms of what I do? And I realized that it's not something I thought to myself, and maybe it's not discussed within our field so much, like money and money matters. So I do what I do. I go on this, like, finances and therapy, and I start, doing a search, and all of a sudden I come across Dr. Megan McCoy, and lo and behold, not only does the field of mental health talk about money, there's actually at Kansas State University a financial therapy certification. So I reach out to Dr. Megan McCoy, and here we are. And just reading your stuff, I'm really looking forward to hear how you can shed light on
Yeah.
to all of us clinicians on matters money.
Yeah.
So with that, welcome, and
Thank
I'd be
you.
happy to learn about you and what you do and how
Yeah.
you came into this.
And I think your introduction is just a perfect segue into talking about this. Because what's interesting about financial therapy is that it's interdisciplinary, meaning that mental health professionals and financial professionals can train in financial therapy because there's such an overlap. And so your story highlights two very good points. First is the point that us as mental health professionals are not trained to deal with the most important and biggest stressor in all of our clients' lives. And the second thing is that financial planners are amazing, but sometimes they're not equipped to talk to a client to get through the anxiety of not knowing enough about money and teach them in a language that makes sense. And so the financial therapy program at Kansas State allows financial professionals and mental health professionals to train together to talk about money better with their clients and alleviate financial anxiety.
So are you saying that the program is sort of the intersection between actual financial planners who
Hmm.
may not have the training to be able to have a discussion about the
Yeah.
stressors and the burdens and the meaning of money,
Yeah.
and therapists who are, maybe, I don't want to make too much of a sweeping generalization, maybe are a little they have
Yeah.
no clue. They're a
Well,
little clueless about money.
there's a little bit of research that actually supports the sweeping generalization. There has been a couple studies now that show mental health professionals ascribe to a lot of money avoidance scripts. They believe that like either money is not important or money should be used to make the world better, or I'm really good at people, I'm not good with numbers. And so all three of those scripts kind of result in us avoiding financial conversations. And you partner that with just the money taboo that is in our culture. It is overwhelming for a lot of us as mental health professionals to broach this topic with our clients. I mean, there was like a man on the street episode I watched where they went up to people and asked them about their sex lives. And these people gave graphic descriptions about their sexual activities. And most people would be like, oh, that's taboo, but they had no problem saying it. And then the interviewer said, how much money is in your bank account? And every one of these participants just shut down. They're like, we're not going to talk about that. Like,
Right.
trying to
It's
put those together is hard.
it's very, very private, and it's very
Yeah.
there's probably a lot going on when in the discussion money. So
Yeah.
in the work you do, this referencing of bridging the gap between money people, money
Mhm.
professionals and therapists. Say a little more.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, so in my classes, the first class is much more based on basic counseling skills that all our therapists are great at, but it's how to ask the right questions about money. He's this great author named Jeffrey Jew said once that money is the object that we project our deepest fears and our sense of the future and our power onto. And so the first class really just helps financial professionals and mental health professionals start being curious about their client's money story. What are the beliefs you have around money? How does that line up with your partner? How do your beliefs as a practitioner impact your work with your clients in terms of transference issues and even what you advise? Like one of the most common issues I had before I went into the world of financial therapy was talking to couples about household role distribution. How he doesn't do enough around the house or she doesn't do enough around the house, and a lot of that boiled down to how much they made and their sense of like entitlement or guilt. And yet I never thought of bridging that conversation about household responsibility to the money conversation that was underlying it and the beliefs that came back from their history and their families and things like that.
So what a power, what a powerful messaging around money and how what it means to someone, and
Yeah.
how it informs a function in relationships. So if I'm
Right.
in a traditional model and I'm the breadwinner, or I'm even not even in both partners in a couple work, and one is a considerably bigger wage earner than the other one, right? Does that inform what the division of duties in the house is? And
Yeah, and research shows it's not true that women, in in the heterosexual relationships I'm just talking about, but women tend to, even if they make more money, still do more household duties around the house. But it's again because a lot of times couples aren't talking about the financial and they project it. It's not about the money. It's not about the money. Well, sometimes it is about the money, you know?
our beliefs about money and what it means, right?
What it
And
means.
so that's the first class. And in terms of different types of beliefs or ideas around money,
Yeah.
what is the gamut? What are you seeing?
Yeah, there's a couple of great researchers that talk about money beliefs or money personalities, but my favorite is a group of researchers named Brad Klontz, Ted Klontz, and Rick Kaler, and they call it money scripts. And they say there's four main types of money scripts. One is money avoidant. That's who I was, is someone who either believes that money is something taboo or bad or greedy, or is someone who feels quite insecure about money. And so either way, they just avoid money. Then there's money status individuals who believe that money is their sense of worth. Like if they make more money or they have more things that show that they've made money, that people will see them as a valuable human being. And then there's money worshipers who somehow think money's going to solve all their problems, or that wealthy people are different than them and they'll never be that person. So they either are lacking the skills or the knowledge or the magical ingredient to be wealthy. And then there's money vigilant who see money as so important that they'll hold on to it and like want to be secretive or private about it. And none of these money types are bad. It's when we're unaware and unconscious of these driving beliefs that the problems arise, because we're not using our frontal lobe. We're not using our consciousness to make decisions. We're making these impulsive decisions,
You know,
and
it's
not just about money.
it's funny
Yeah.
you say that. I worked for the government. I worked in the prison system for a while, and as a psychologist, and there
Yeah.
was this culture in the community of government workers that, working in the private sector was this big deal. And I did transition, and the idea of leaping to the private transition was so, to the private world, was to that transition from government to the community, to just being in private practice, was such a big leap. And people were
Yeah.
terrified of that. They thought that this is the only space that many people thought this is the only
Yeah.
space they can earn a living. And
Right.
they were scared to
Yeah.
venture out and really unhappy in their jobs.
Yeah. And there's the underlying thing is that they're scared that they're not going to succeed, scared that there's not a space for them. But there's also sometimes a guilt that many mental health professionals have that they're not, saving the world. Like most of us went into mental health to save the world. So there's like a guilt that sometimes underlies many mental health professionals. Like if I charge too much or if I charge for a no show, am I hurting people that I'm tasked to help? And that could be very intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, here I am charging for this relational sort of dialogue, right?
Yeah.
And who am I? And I have a lot of people who, the students I work with, talking when they're entering private practice, just having such a hard time. I did too,
Yeah. Yeah.
stating a fee, right? and
Right.
and setting a fee that's part of the community standard, whatever the community standard fee is, and having a hard
Yeah.
time saying it, or the opposite, people saying, overstating a value and trying to command so much more. But either way, it comes down to this relationship with money. And you spoke about these different scripts: the money
Yeah.
avoider, the person who's afraid of it; the status, the worship, and this,
Vigilant.
the vigilance, this like
Yeah.
scared of losing it. And I've seen, all different I've worked with all different sorts of people, and so common a theme for me is people who come from families where, you know executing in the world, and
Mhm.
especially young men, whether
Yeah.
they're struggling to launch or not, there's such a pressure around the subject of success and money and what
Yeah.
it means to them. So even if
Gosh.
you're not in the money, you can have, it sounds like you can have any one of these scripts.
Oh, yeah. And I love doing a money genogram with my clients. Like, it's just a guided genogram where you just dig in deeper to money dynamics to see what role money ran in families. There's a great article for your listeners called by Mumford and Weeks, and they have these beautiful questions that can help guide your money genogram about like, what did you respect about your parents' relationship with money? What did you want to leave behind? What was the women's role around money? What were male roles around money? What did you see overt conversations about money, or what were some of the taboos around money? And it's so insightful because sometimes people talk about opposites attract, and research has shown that's really not true. That we tend to marry someone very much like us in religion and those big areas, except for when it comes to money. And then all of a sudden we tend to be attracted to our opposite. The spender falls in love with the conservative saver and respects that, and the saver looks at the spender and says, "Oh, you have so much fun. I want to be more like you." And so this one time in this taboo topic, we're marrying our opposite. The money genogram can open up all these unsaid differences between them that gives you more insights on why your partner behaves around money in the way he or she does.
I think of some of the people I work with in practice who are in a relationship and looking to commit long term, and so much of the discussions that I'm reflecting on right now are rooted in frustration about the other person not understanding the importance of
Yeah.
work slash money, and not
Yeah.
respecting, feeling like this person's not respecting, being respected for their position on the value of
Right.
work money. So
Yeah.
how do you so a lot of this discussion in the work you do in financial therapy gets unearthed by these themes that you're talking about, and by the ability to sort of um, dive deep into the history and of the beliefs and the core beliefs around money, and,
Yeah.
and modeling around money. So,
Yeah.
so in the work you do, how does it play out? Can you give me some typical types of therapy that you see, and how, and for you, cases that really represent some of the power of this work?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest ones and maybe this is my own stuff that I've worked on, but one of the things I find interesting is when there's cases of financial infidelity or a lack of financial transparency between couples where they're kind of keeping secrets from each other. And so often in the work, of course, it's about like you broke, trust by buying stuff behind my back or getting into debt behind my back. But what it transforms into is the lack of ability to be assertive and ask your partner for what you need, or having this money shame that people walk around with, like feeling guilty about what they buy and what they spend money on. And so I think so often my conversations that are start out like, "Oh, he bought something behind my back," or I'm using too many binary pronouns. I don't mean to, but but
That's okay.
that the person bought stuff behind my back and that hurt me, becomes a conversation of, why couldn't you ask your partner for this? What are your assertiveness skills that are missing? And then that can be generalized into all other areas of their life of being able to say, I want this, I need this. Can you meet my need here?
So,
Or, yeah.
so I once was talking to somebody, and who's in in a similar situation. The issue was there was a urgency around building the right house. Two professionals, and
Yeah.
an urgency, and one person was on a mission to get the money
Yeah.
however they could, and the other person, he sent me a picture of an ostrich with his head in the sand, and he said,
Yeah.
"That's me when it comes to money." So spouse was he didn't want to look. He was an avoider, and a
Yeah.
money avoidant. But
Yeah.
there was an impulsive sort of urgency of, I need to have this perfect house,
Yeah.
and then and none of it was really properly discussed, and they
Oh,
ended up not being able to keep the house, and they sort of had to regroup. Now that sounds tragic,
yeah.
but the good news of that is what came to light finally, kind of like in addiction when there's a bottom. It brought
Yeah.
about discussions that were needed, and the ostrich took his head out of the sand, right?
Yeah.
And the more impulsive I have to have, it got to increase accountability, and even though there's struggle, I feel like they're sort of reconnecting in an important discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a research study with my friend Kenneth White, and we asked people, when was the last time you talked to your partner around money? And 95% of our respondents had not talked to a single soul about money in an entire year. And when I looked at that result, of course, there was some methodological skewness to the sample because of their socioeconomic status. But when I looked at those results, I was like, what a missed opportunity to daydream about your futures together. What a missed opportunity to say, what is our life going to look like when we achieve that house, or we achieve that European trip, or achieve whatever you're saving for, or even getting out of debt? What's your life going to look like when you get that? That is such a beautiful, like, in the Gottman language, like kind of love map that you can create with your partner, that so many people are avoiding by not entering into one of the biggest areas of our life. Like, money is, you can't avoid, it's there every day of your life.
So,
So
and as I hear this and I think about some of my patients who are so afraid of the discussion,
yeah,
right? So that they're just putting, whatever money they're saving is saved in a bank and not invested in a way that
yeah,
lends to
yeah,
financial freedom. Part
yeah.
of that is because they're just afraid to have the discussion of money and they're afraid of money.
Right. Yeah.
So what you're talking about is how do you unpack these really important
Yeah.
discussions. And if I'm an anxious person, right, around finances,
Mm-hmm.
which could be one of the symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder, right?
Yeah.
That it could be
Absolutely.
one of the extreme worries could be money or
Yeah.
work stress.
Right.
So part of what you're doing is creating a therapy atmosphere that insists on talking about money. So you spoke about
Right.
money infidelity. I love that term, right?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
may it may land differently than sexual infidelity, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it
Yeah.
also,
Absolutely.
I've seen it before. It's a shock to the system. I once worked with
Right.
someone who
Because you're stealing your future.
you're stealing your
Yeah.
future, or somebody's
Yeah.
discovering that their inheritance is gone, right?
Yeah.
We were gonna buy something. We were planning for our kids' college tuition, and
Mm.
and then and then only to discover that it's all gone to some sort of investment that I never heard about. I mean, I'm just sharing
Right.
things that have come up in the
Yeah.
course of
Yeah.
my work with people. So
Yep.
that's one road of therapy that
Yeah.
begins the discussion. What other types of
Yeah.
therapy sessions do you see?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of Pauline Boss, and she does a lot of work about when you're recreating systems or creating new systems, someone's entering or leaving the system. The system has to reorganize, and there can be the potential for a crisis. And what I've seen is a lot of people, when they get married or remarried, are like trying to navigate their new roles around money, their new lack of transparency, and especially when there's children. So many of my cases were blended families, and how much do we give to our kids, and what is it entitling them, and when is it not enough, and when is it too much? And that's a huge conversation because it impacts so many different values in one thing, like
Oh
that's a
yeah. You're
yeah,
reminding me of, I have 4 kids,
yeah,
and you know, I think me and my wife are on mostly the same page. A wise person would said to me, when you get married, I don't know if this is consistent with your research that opposites attract, but a wise
yeah.
person said to me, it's really important to be on the same page about money, whether you love it or
Ah,
you're super cheap. It's cool to
yeah.
have a partner who's on the same page. So
Yes.
I think me and my wife have our attitude about money is there's not a lot of questioning. There's not a lot of
Oh, that's good.
there's not a lot of questioning of the other.
Yeah.
We both are earners, and therefore it's not like we have separate accounts, but we're very, what's mine is yours. That's the vibe.
Yeah.
But with the
Yeah.
4 kids, right? I was more of a spoiler, hey, let's go out to eat. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't think about it. But even so, and this is where we sort of where we butt heads a little bit, is on the matter of having a job during college.
Yeah.
And I have my kids are they were driven, and my feeling was this: if you show me you're driven in an area, I have a kid who, one kid has a graphic design company, another one is a songwriter, And those are very, they were building their resumes. And my attitude, and even to my two younger ones, is the same. I will invest in you 100%. So if you need studio time, if you need a certain equipment for your art, I will. It's very important to me that I help you if you're showing me dedication.
Yeah.
And my wife's position on it was they should be working towards that goal and they should be struggling. And
Yeah.
we had a hard time meeting on the middle on this one.
Right.
I won. Uh, I won. Not in
Unpack
a
that
not
one.
in that
I'm kidding.
infidelity way. I straight up just said
I like
I
it. As long
did
as you were
it. I
assertive, I'm
did. It was
happy.
more on the impulsive, transparent impulsive. I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
term, but I just made it up.
I
So
like it.
so I was very much like, no, we gotta support them. And it
Yeah.
ended up for the good, in the sense that I think they were able to get good momentum in terms of their careers. But
Yeah.
maybe in retrospect, right, there was wisdom in some sort of hybrid discussion where they get to work a little and contribute a little bit and at the same
Mhm.
time have the opportunity. So
Yeah.
that just
Yeah.
came to life for me.
Right. Yeah. And a couple of my colleagues and I wrote this great paper called Scaffolding versus Enabling. And it's kind of what you were describing, that there's so much benefit in being able to scaffold your children and let their path be easier as long as they have a path in mind. Their problems arise when we enable our kids to say, let me make things easier for you because I don't think you can do it. And that's what sometimes happens. Like, I don't think you can work and accomplish it. Rather than, I know that if you put your nose to the grind, you could do it. I just want to make this easier so you have more time. Those are two different conversations. And sometimes parents forget to differentiate it. But I think because your partner and yours, like the spectrum out of it, like it kind of met in the middle and kind of said, this is scaffolding your career, not enabling you because I know you're going to accomplish something great.
For the record, for anyone who's listening, the fancy colleges that my kids go to was not a free ride. No matter, they had to take loans because if
No.
they have to feel the pain that I feel, that's one of my
I like it.
positions, is you must participate in this, and that if you
Yeah.
take it for granted, I won't continue being an investor. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to invest in your life, but only if you're
Yeah.
a participant. It's not a given. It's not a given, and I'm not going to rescue you just to say you have this degree. I'm not going to rescue you from that, from yourself.
Yeah.
I think that actually hurts someone. So
Yeah. And going back to more of the process versus the content, what you and your wife did so beautiful is you had ongoing conversations about this. So many of us, because of the physiological arousal that happens when we talk about money, shut down and avoid, and then eventually, like you said, impulsively decide one thing without ongoing. Why do you feel that way? Are you a mean mom and just don't care about your kids? No, you want them to feel like a sense of purpose. Are you like too easy dad and just want to let them get away with? No, you just want to make it that they can focus on their studies. What happens with couples is they skip those middle conversations, and then you put on top of that the cognitive bias of actor observer bias, where we tend to understand the context of our decisions, but we tend to apply all of our partner's decisions to their personality. So when we make a decision like we want to support our kids, we're like thinking, oh, I want to support the kids for this reason, this reason, this reason. Sometimes if you never have that conversation about why, then it just becomes you're mean or you're a pushover, and we just go with that for 20 years, 30 years without asking them, why do you want to do that, or what has led you in your life to believe that.
interesting. So if I didn't have the conversations, I think I could just have labels like punitive,
Yeah.
withholding,
Right.
and sort of anorexic, so to speak, with spending,
Yeah.
instead of hearing the wisdom behind the
Right.
value, right? And also the
Right.
context behind the value, where my father is a Holocaust survivor, and
Yeah.
his mom hid him,
Hmm.
when he was a small child, and just was the just the epitome of survivor. And
Yeah.
she she, in a tough world, she made a good living. And, you know, their value of what money meant to them survival, and you must have it. And it was very, very much about the ability to always have to be on the move if need be. So there was an emergency sense, not emergency funds for
Right.
6 months, but an emergency, like I may have to
Yeah.
vacate. I may have to get out of the
Right.
country. So that sense of how you relate to money is so much different than someone who doesn't grow up in that experience.
Right. Right. I mean, if I had to boil down financial therapy to one sentence, it would truly be helping people understand the why. Understand the why behind what you do with money, and understanding the why what your family and your loved ones do with money. And if we got that step, I think so much less pain would be involved.
So excellent.
Yeah.
So you're boiling it down, and I want you to
Oh yeah.
speak now, and we'll close with this. Right.
Okay.
And by the way, I this is inspiring me. I kind of do want to do a money series, like a
Yay.
series on the discussion of money in terms of,
Oh good.
because especially in the climate of, in the last year, we've seen an
Ah,
economy of terror, right? Where
yeah.
we who knows what's going to happen in the early
Right.
days of the pandemic, and a stock market crash followed by a surge, followed by spending and all whatever. And this is apolitical, right? But
Yeah.
there are certain things, and there are themes that, if I'm oblivious to this aspect of the world, how can I help people who are terrified of inflation? How can I
Right.
help people who are so obsessed and preoccupied with market turns and making money? And
Right.
depending on which script you have, you're going to have a different relationship with the environment. Some people may not, may not want to know anything about it, and some people may be terrified, and some people may be
Yeah.
saying, this is my time to finally rebuild. I have patients who during the pandemic were so grateful that everybody was collapsed, because now they don't feel like losers.
Yeah. Yeah.
so so
There was a real thing too, like anxiety. People who had long-standing anxiety actually felt better after the pandemic because they had something to focus their anxiety on, and they felt less guilt about having anxiety because everybody was allowed to be anxious. So the same thing with the money. Like we're all in a weird situation,
so
so it's okay.
under
Yeah.
earners felt so good, like they,
Yeah.
yes, like, misery loves miserable company. So
Yeah.
if you were going to speak to, and I'm in Los Angeles here, and we're in the land of psychotherapists. Come to West
Yeah.
LA, and you'll see so many. Every other office building has packed with therapists. And
Yeah.
if you were going to say, some sort of advice to newly licensed or in training, or even a seasoned therapist, around what you do, what are
Yeah.
some basics that you want to say to those individuals?
Y- Yeah. My first thing is get your money stuff under control. Like, do you have strong feelings around money, beliefs around money, whether you deem them as healthy or unhealthy? I am a chronic underspender, but it was just because I had guilt every time I spent a dollar because I was like, oh, that could be used for someone else, or that could be used for my student loans, or that could be used for charity. But that constant guilt is not a good thing to live with. So if you have constant guilt, constant shame, or constant conflict, it's time to do your own work. And a lot of times, all of us just do so much better if we have a therapist of our own to process out loud with. That's my number one step. I think just being okay with money conversations. The second thing is be curious about your client's relationship with money. If they're having money shame, money anxiety, or money conflict, and use that again as money being the metaphor for power, safety, and security in the relationship. Because those are three things every one of your listeners would be like, yeah, we're talking about power, security in my relationship, but we won't talk about money. And then the third thing to give a plug is a financial therapy association I volunteer for is a completely nonprofit organization. And they have amazing webinars. We also jump on Zoom and kind of connect with one another to get support and resources. And what should I read next? And what intervention should I try? So those would be my three tangible steps for your listeners to join that too.
That is so helpful. And in
Nice.
conclusion, I didn't say this earlier. I'm in reading about you. I know you've done a lot of writing and publishing in this field and are a real contributor. So thank you. And I always end this way. If anybody has any questions or wanted to sort of reach out to you and learn a bit more about what you do, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, my email is Megan McCoy, all one word, at KSU.edu, which stands for Kansas State University.
Thank you so much. It
Thank
was
you.
wonderful, wonderful beginning conversation, and I look
Yes.
forward to hearing more. Thank you for coming
Thank
on.
you so much.
Take
Have a
care.
good one.
You too.
This podcast is for general information and entertainment purposes only. This should not be considered treatment advice, nor is it a substitute for an individual treatment plan. If you have questions or concerns about your individual situation, it is strongly recommended you consult a licensed professional to talk about things that are specific to you. If there is an emergency, it is strongly recommended you seek treatment at your nearest emergency room.